So now we're getting to emails. Emails can be a major problem, and in fact, they are probably a major problem for you, even if you don't realize it. Emails probably rule a big part of your day, and as has been said before, an email inbox is a to-do list that someone else has made for you. And you don't want to be working on other people's to-do lists before you work on your own. And that's why a lot of people recommend not checking email first thing in the morning or really limiting the number of times you do check email. And that's pretty much what I'm going to tell you as well. But let's get a bit more into it. So I use the 4Ds, and I got this from Getting Things Done by Dave Allen, but you'll find a variation of this in the Eisenhower Matrix if you follow that. This is the way that I prefer to look at it. You can feel free to look at the Eisenhower Matrix and see if that makes more sense to you, but to me this is a lot more actionable. Yeah, so the 4Ds are what to do when you open your email inbox and you see new emails. The first D is delete. Anything you can, absolutely anything you can, right away, just delete it. That's the first thing you should be doing. Second of all is delegate. So this is anything that can be handed off to someone else. If you're working with other people or you outsource certain things or you have certain partners and stuff like that, anything you can delegate, just do that right away. Then with the emails that are left, you want to defer anything that needs to get done. You set up a certain time for you to work on it. Maybe you already had time set up to work on a specific project or a specific part of a project, and this email refers to that. Good. Defer it to that time. Say, okay, 2 p.m. I'm going to work on that. A lot of email programs, in fact, let you snooze an email or something until a certain time. And you can decide, okay, I'm going to snooze this, get it out of my sight until 2 p.m. Or maybe it doesn't follow under any of those things. And like I said, you want to leave certain amount of time every day for unexpected stuff. Maybe you can defer it to that, or you can defer it to the next day when you can schedule it in properly, however it might be. Anyway, the bulk of the things that you receive, which are real projects that take some certain amount of time to do, you should defer them to whenever they need to get done. These are the important things. The last D is for, let's say, the urgent things rather than important. And I would just say anything that takes less than 2 minutes. If it takes less than 2 minutes, yeah, feel free to do it right away. It'll be better than having to schedule it and deal with it later on. If you can get it done in 2 minutes or less, then do it. And these are the 4Ds, and you should do them in that order. You delete first, then delegate, then defer, and then do. In terms of checking your email, you should probably check it at set times, and you should deal with all the new emails every single time you check it. So don't just check email because you're clicking on your email inbox and you click on one email that looks interesting but ignore a couple other ones, stuff like that. And that's why you check it at set times, and because during those set times you can decide, okay, I'm going to set this time to check email and actually deal with every single email as it comes along my way using the 4Ds. At least that's the way I do it. Once again, if you want to check your emails, you can do it a couple times a day, maybe not first thing in the morning, stuff like that. I'll talk a bit more about it later on when I talk about the things that I follow under the tips. But for now, let's just say when you do check your email inbox, follow your own method for now or whatever works best for you, or try different methods and see what works best. And I do recommend though using the 4Ds and then dealing with all new emails when you check. So now we're going to deal with other distractions. So let me ask you a couple questions. While you're working, if you're working from home, and these days I'm recording this during the lockdown, so everyone's working from home, but chances are if you're a freelancer entrepreneur, you're spending a lot of time either working from home, working in a coffee shop, or working from your office, but it's maybe just you or just a couple people in that office. So I have some questions for you. Do you find yourself going to the fridge a lot? Do you find yourself turning on your TV a lot? Are you chatting or checking your phone quite a bit during the day? And by the way, later on, I'll go through my top secret method to make sure that you don't get distracted by your phone, but that'll come later on. Another question is, what else are you doing? What else are you doing during the day that you probably shouldn't be doing? What are you doing in terms of getting distracted? Now, a good way to catch yourself in stuff like this is maybe to set an alarm. Maybe set an alarm for every hour during the day. And when that alarm goes off, where are you and what are you doing? You might think, oh, I just went to the fridge, but it was just this once. Yeah, except if you catch yourself going there quite often, then maybe that is an issue that you should address. And if that alarm goes off every hour and a couple of those hours you're at the fridge, well, maybe you should stop maybe you're just munching on stuff because you need a distraction. And by the way, I'm bringing up the fridge because that's something I do all the time. I find myself going to the fridge and just opening it up and then maybe grabbing something, whatever is easiest to eat. In fact, my wife complains about it a bit. She's asked me what I'm doing always at the fridge. Anyway, but all of these things are things that can take up some time. And so try to keep track of them and find out how you're getting distracted. And then deal with each one. Look, each one is going to take something different. For me, for the fridge, I found that if I don't have the fridge in my line of vision, that actually helps a lot. In fact, if I'm in a separate room, it's the best. And I try to, when I'm working, have nothing in front of me and just either a blank wall or a window. But otherwise, I try not to have too many distractions. If you find yourself turning on your TV, maybe you shouldn't be working in view of the TV, or you should hide the remote or something along those lines. And so just try to deal with each thing. And if you do that exercise that I mentioned where you set an alarm for every hour on your phone and you find yourself doing things, then it'll give you a lot clearer perspective of how you are procrastinating. And this can be very useful because many times, at least for me, I found that I'm procrastinating without even knowing it because my mind's just wandering and I end up doing things without even thinking about it. So I'm procrastinating in ways I didn't even know. So these are things you should keep in mind. Obviously, procrastinating can also mean doing a lot of things on your computer that you shouldn't be doing and going to social media and stuff like that. So that's probably something we should deal with, and we're going to deal with it in the next lesson. So for online distractions, my recommendation is to block anything you can. This means Twitter, this means Facebook, this means YouTube, this means Instagram, this means TikTok, this means, yes, news channels. This also means personal email, if your personal email is different from your work email. And you want to block all of this. What I do is actually I block all of it until 4 p.m. And the only reason I unblock it at 4 p.m. is because I use some of those, especially Twitter and sometimes YouTube. I use it for work. And so I do want to do some work stuff on those channels, but I can save it to 4 p.m. And otherwise, I find myself just typing in Facebook or Twitter just out of habit without even thinking. I find myself doing it. In fact, even after I blocked it, I find myself doing it and a page doesn't open. I'm like, oh yeah, of course I can't. And it shows just how I'm doing it without thinking because I know it's blocked, but I still type it out of habit. So I'm using a Mac, and so I use a program called Self-Control to block anything I want, and I find it very useful. But there are a bunch of programs like that. You can look them up, and you can find a program that just blocks whatever you need blocked, and you can put in whatever websites you want to block until a certain time or for however many hours, et cetera, et cetera. And once again, as time goes by, see how you waste your time. You might start noticing that you waste your time on different websites, on different games, on different bulletin boards and stuff like that. And if these aren't part of your daily and weekly and monthly goals, like if these aren't part actually just of your hourly goals during the hour you're supposed to be working, well, then you probably should be blocking these because these are a way that you're getting distracted, that you're procrastinating, and this means you're not getting your goals done. And so you should find a way to deal with them, and I say block it. The whole goal of this and of the lesson before is that you want to make it as difficult as possible to procrastinate and as easy as possible to get work done. And that's the whole goal for this. So if you're blocking stuff, it makes it very difficult to access your Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube because you can't do it on your computer. And if you find yourself far away from the fridge or stuff like that, you're making it a lot more difficult to actually schlep over to the fridge and open it. So you really want to make it difficult to procrastinate, however that works best for you. That's the goal. And you want to make it as easy as possible to get work done. So here we're going to deal with increasing productivity, which is a big part of time management because the amount of productivity you have or how productive you are will dictate how much time you have available. And so you really want to be as productive as possible in your work. So the first thing that I have to say is just do it. Like Nike said, just get it done. You have to start somewhere, even if it's not 100%, just do it. And what I'm tackling here is things like analysis paralysis. Analysis paralysis is something that you don't want to fall into, and it's very common. What happens is that you feel you're not ready to get something done and you need to learn more about it, And so you start analyzing all the different aspects and everything that might come along, everything that could go wrong, every issue that could come up. And this just delays your doing something. Of course, you don't want to do sloppy work all the time, but at a certain point, you're going to find yourself analyzing just because you're kind of scared. And at that point is probably when you should just do it. Just take a deep breath and do it. Remember also that perfection is your enemy. And then, now this might also sound counterintuitive, but this is another form of analysis paralysis, quite frankly. People don't want to do something. As Seth Godin says, they don't want to ship it out, but they don't want to get something done because they want it to be 100% perfect. I can tell you right away it's not going to be 100% perfect, no matter how much preparation you go in. And in fact, the best way to make it 100% perfect is to just do it and deal with issues as they come up, and because then you'll know exactly which issues you should be dealing with rather than trying to guess the issues that'll come up, and you won't be able to guess correctly anyway. The only way to know correctly is to actually do it and then deal with the issues as they come one by one. Very, very seldom are any of these issues catastrophic. You know, you can always deal with them in their own way. There are going to be issues, at least for me, there have been many issues where I felt pretty dumb that I should have foreseen them. On the other hand, at least I dealt with them quickly and I was able to do it. Since I mentioned Seth Godin, another thing he says is that you should fail quickly. And what he means by this is basically you should get stuff done. If it's going to fail, fail quickly so you can move on. Because even if you prepare a whole lot, it doesn't increase the chance that it'll succeed if it's going to fail anyway. You will never be properly prepared for what you're doing. What you're preparing for is the unknown. This isn't like preparing for a test in school. This isn't even like working a corporate job where your boss tells you you need to do X, Y, Z, and so as long as you do X, Y, Z, you're fine and you can get a promotion. No, if you're working on your own, you will never be properly prepared because there is too much unknown. And so the best way to prepare is to just do it. And finally, I want to say that there are no guidelines that guarantee success. There are no guidelines out there. There's no book or TV show or even course that can guarantee that you will 100% be successful. Once again, you're not just studying for a test where as long as you know the material, you will get 100%. You're not just following steps that will guarantee you will get your promotion. When you're dealing with real life and you're dealing with your own job, or when you're an entrepreneur, when you're a freelancer, you cannot follow certain guidelines and be guaranteed success. You have to just do it, and you learn by doing. Obviously, look, any other preparation you can do, if you can read certain books and prepare on stuff, that always helps. But you don't want to be delaying what you're doing, constantly trying to prepare yourself more and more and more, because that just, once again, that's analysis paralysis, and it can be devastating. It means that you will never get it done. So I just want to really emphasize this fact. As you can tell, I'm really belaboring this fact that you should just do it in all different forms. And so hopefully this addressed any issue you might have of if you're scared or if you want to get it perfect, or if you feel you're not properly prepared. I can tell you that that is not the case at all, and you are ready, and so just do it. So another technique is the Pomodoro technique. Now the Pomodoro technique, or actually the Pomodoro technique, I should say, it's Italian, and I'm an Italian to English translator, so I should pronounce this correctly. This is a time management technique that was developed by an Italian, Francesco Cirillo. In essence, what it says is that you divide your work into time fragments. Usually it's about 25 minutes. So what does this mean? This means that you work for 25 minutes and then take a short break. Then you work for another 25 minutes and then take a short break. Then you work for another 25 minutes and then take a short break. Now these breaks can be, let's say, 3 to 5 minutes each. And then after you do 4 pomodoros, and then you can take a longer break of 15 to 30 minutes and then reset. Now I want to mention this because it is a good technique, and I know a lot of people find it useful. I personally don't. I have found that when I'm working on something, I like to get in the zone, quote unquote, and I like to really concentrate on what I'm working. And I can go, 25 minutes, 30, an hour, even 2 hours. Probably 2 hours is the max, I think. But I can go for quite a bit of time if I am concentrating on something and I want to get it done, and I can be all in without distractions and actually do it. And I would hate to interrupt myself after 25 minutes and kind of lose the fact that I was in the zone to do that. So that's why, frankly, it doesn't work for me. 25 minutes is kind of arbitrary, and depending on the job I'm doing, it might not work as well. So I don't follow it, but I did want to mention it to you guys in case you want to try it. And for certain jobs, it can probably be extremely good because if you know how much time it's going to take and you can allot 25 minutes to it, it can work out well. Now, there are variations on this. As you can see here, 90-minute time periods, natural time periods, et cetera, et cetera. So you can read through it yourself and you can figure out what works best for you. But I just wanted to get you acquainted with this technique, the Pomodoro technique, because it is a time management technique that is quite popular and quite useful for some people. Now, another productivity technique is Seinfeld's Don't Break the Chain. Now, this is Jerry Seinfeld, the comedian, and his method of not breaking the chain was basically that he decided he would write one joke per day, one funny line per day. And every single day when he would do it, he would cross it off in his calendar. And that was the general idea. Every single day, he would write a joke, not a whole monologue, not even necessarily something golden or awesome, just one funny line per day. And as soon as he would do it, he would put a cross in the calendar, and then that was it. Now, after a while, after you get a couple crosses, you have this innate feeling that you don't want to break the chain because otherwise you need to start over. And so he found himself wanting to do it every day because he did not want to break the chain. Now, you can search for it and read up a bit more about it because it is quite interesting. And you'll find that many different artists, or I should say actually precisely comedians, had this. Steve Martin was also extremely serious about doing this. And so you'll see that even comedians don't just wait for inspiration, but they are very strict on time management and on structure. He had a big calendar with the whole year in his apartment, and every time he wrote a joke, he put a red X on that date. And that was it. That's what motivated him to keep him going. And obviously, a lot of the stuff he wrote, he couldn't use later on or didn't use, but still it kept him going and it kept him improving day after day after day after day after day. And this can be excellent for you as well. So don't wait for inspiration. Just do it every day. If there's something you need to get done, something you need to work on, just do it every day. I know for a lot of authors, the recommendation, I think this was Stephen King originally who said it, but the recommendation is to write X amount, say write like 300 words, 300 crappy words per day. And that's it. Or maybe just write one page, one crappy page per day, and that's it. It doesn't need to be awesome. It doesn't need to be great. In fact, it shouldn't. You just need to sit down and write. And just do it every single day. And I want to emphasize this because very often this applies more to creative jobs than not. And so if you are in a creative industry and you're just waiting for inspiration before you work, I want you to consider maybe not doing that and trying to do something more like Seinfeld's Don't Break the Chain and just doing something every day. If you're a painter, paint something every day. If you write songs, write something every day. If you keep doing this over and over and over and over and over again, you can't help but improve, and it will really help you. And just psychologically, you don't want to break that chain, and so you will keep doing it. So the next method is the Ivy Lee method. I mentioned this before, but it bears repeating, and I want to get a bit more into it as well. Now, the Ivy Lee method is quite simple, actually, and you can just follow these points here. At the end of each workday, write down the 6 most important things you need to accomplish tomorrow. Do not write down more than 6 tasks. This should sound very familiar to you from the beginning of this course. And then he says prioritize those 6 items in order of their true importance. And when you arrive tomorrow, concentrate only on the first task. Work until the first task is finished before moving on to the second task, etc., etc., etc. And you can read out more about it, but that's basically how it works. It says, then approach the rest of your list in the same fashion. At the end of the day, move any unfinished items to a new list of 6 tasks for the following day. So this more or less falls in line with what I was recommended. I usually recommend between 3 or 4 tasks. It can obviously depend on the task. He says to prioritize them in order of importance. I usually say start with the hardest things first because those usually weigh down on you the most. But definitely feel free to look at this and feel free to apply it for your own methods. The Ivy Lee method is something that's been used now, I think, for over 100 years, and it is it's quite useful. And I know it's used in a lot of companies and for a lot of people, or different variations thereof. And I think what I use is actually pretty much a variation of the Ivy Lee method. So another way to increase productivity, and these are leading versus lagging indicators. Now this is used a lot, I know it's used a lot for marketing and sales, but also just for general productivity in general for freelancers and entrepreneurs, which is what we're talking about right now. So what are leading versus lagging indicators? So a lagging indicator is output. This is an indicator which say, I made 10 sales last month. Okay, but I only know that I made 10 sales after the sales are made. And so that's the output. Once I earn the money from the sale, then I know that I made 10 sales. And so that's why it's lagging. While leading is more input. Like if you say I made 100 sales calls, then you know that you made those calls right as you make them. And so you can say, okay, my input was 100 sales call, and you know that right away. By the output, you might have to wait a month or two or even more sometimes until you get paid. But the leading, you know right away. So why is this important? Well, results obviously are what matter at the end of the day, and they're the important part because obviously you need to make those sales in order to earn the money. But the fact is that they lag. And so very often it can be a lot more useful to use leading indicators. And so a lot of salespeople will actually do this, and they'll say, rather than saying, okay, I need to make at least 10 sales today, they'll say, no, I need to make at least 100 phone calls today, and then that's it. Whatever happens, happens. And because this makes it a leading indicator, and it's a lot easier to measure and a lot less haphazard. Now, they know that on average, out of 100 sales calls, they will make 10 sales. And so more or less, it should fall in line with making 10 sales. Obviously, the numbers I'm coming up with here are completely arbitrary and random. I'm just saying 110 because they're easy to say. I don't want to make you feel pressured to doing 100 sales calls or 10 sales per day. But you get the picture. And so if you find yourself having certain goals or certain things that you want to achieve and they have a lagging indicator, it's the output, maybe try looking at the input and try to use that in terms of what you do day to day, because it'll be a lot easier to measure. And if you tell yourself, okay, I'm going to find at least one client per day, that's tough to do because you don't know who's going to be a client. You might find a client right away, or it might take a long time. But if you tell yourself, okay, I'm going to contact at least 10, 20, 100 clients per day, then yeah, that's something you can actually measure and you can do it right away. And so this can be quite useful for leading versus lagging indicators. Now, there are a lot of variations of this as well. I know, for example, for sales, one thing that's done is people will sort of do a combination. They'll say if you make sales calls and you know that 90% of sales calls result in rejection, then you can say, okay, I want to be rejected 10 times today. And so what does this mean? This means that every time you get rejected, you can cross off and you're that much closer to your lunch break, And on the other hand, if you don't get rejected, you can't cross it off, but it also means you made a sale, so it's a good thing. So anyway, there are different variations you can do on this, but just keep in mind the leading versus lagging indicators when you're setting up your to-do lists and when you're keeping in mind your goals for what you want to get done during the day, the week, and the month. So now we're going to get a bit more into the tips and tricks. At this point, you pretty much have all the information you need in order to be very productive. But here I want to talk about some tweaks and some things that can help you out a bit more and that can also teach you to use what you've learned more effectively. So the first tip is to avoid the cycle of extremes, and it involves not trying to pack too much if you finish early. And because I found myself doing this a lot. As I mentioned, I'll be very productive and I'll finish everything I need to do by noon, and then suddenly I want to do other stuff, and I try to do it, but I'm not nearly as productive as before because I'm sort of fishing for stuff to do, and I sort of then procrastinate because I know I don't have to get it done, and then I feel like the first half of my day was very productive, and then later it wasn't, and I find myself having these cycles of extremes where I'm really motivated and then really demotivated, and then really motivated and then really demotivated. And so along those lines, what I try to do is I like to have extra things to do. I like to, if I finish everything to do by noon, I actually have other stuff that I can work on that are part of my other goals. And I already have them ready for quote unquote free time. And so it's already prepared ahead of time. If I'm done with everything, then, well, these days I just have reading that I want to get done. And so if I finish everything by, say, 3 p.m., I'm not going to try to do something new. I'm just going to close up and then grab one of the books that I want to get reading, maybe go to the terrace and read for a bit. That's it. And, I can feel that I should be getting work done, but I know that's going to push me that much more. So the next morning, I'm going to hit the ground running and try to get all the work done that I can. It's something that I follow and I found it very useful for me. And so maybe you can do that too. Just have extra things that you want to get done that aren't work related, and so you can have them ready for if and when you finish work early. Many times this can also motivate you to finish work early so you can get working on the other stuff that you enjoy doing. It can be hobby related, it can be books, it can be family time, anything along those lines really. And once again, because the other option is burnout, and you really want to avoid this. And at least for me, this was really the case. And so I found it very useful to have extra stuff prepared that I could just do if I wanted to do it and if I ever finished early.